What's happening, everybody? I'm Steve, and welcome back to Junkdrummer TV, and welcome back to episode 6 or 7 of the Know Your Role podcast. And I've been lucky enough to have some very excellent guests on, but I will tell you that I've never been more excited to have the Godmother of Drumming, Mrs. Dorothea Taylor. Thank you for coming, ma'am.
Oh, gosh, it's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Did you ever think that you would eventually have a video that not only has 13 million views, but is probably the most shared video over the last year or two between drummers and people who know drummers?
No, I would have never dreamed it. Oh, you're talking about the Disturbed Down with the Sickness?
Yes, ma'am.
You know what? It had over 80 million views on the Facebook page of Drumeo. It got up to 80 million. And then that's when it disappeared all of a sudden because of copyright, but then it came back on. So I think you're seeing the 13 million since it's been back on. But if you look under Drumeo on Facebook, you can still find that one. And it says 80 million, which was just absolutely insane.
Okay, so yeah, I was using the YouTube metric because that's where I saw it.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you're a drummer, your mom has sent you your video. Everyone, and it's one of the coolest videos that Drumeo does. I love Drumeo. It's the premier, drum education, resource online. We just talked about it offline. I saw that your grandson was playing your drum set in one of your Instagram pictures. Was he the impetus of you getting online?
He was. And then I also have 3 children, and they were all on Instagram also. And one of them, has a dance company. So, he has a lot of following because of, he'll put up announcements and just different dances and things like that. So, I watched everyone's, and so I said, yeah, I'll try it and just see what happens. And then since I did the TikTok for the past, really since COVID, that's when it really took off. And then 3 weeks ago, I had that. I hadn't put up anything in like a week, 7, 8 days. And it was in the evening. It was dark out. And my husband said, let's go watch a movie. And so I said, well, let me run in the kitchen and put something up really quick. And so everybody says, how do you play your doubles so clean and stuff? So I said, I'll just do that. And it was not even clean, really. It wasn't really all that good. Well, I woke up the next morning. I think this was like 3.5 weeks ago. It had 1.2 million overnight. And now it has 36.6 million today on that how to play a double stroke roll. And it's just amazing, really.
Is this the one where you were showing them the real classic accent, the second tap of your double stroke?
No, this was just, I just started a double stroke roll really slow, and then to show, that you're stroking, da, 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 and then I gradually got faster and tried to get as fast as I could, but I wasn't even warmed up because we had been out, and so I just put it up really fast just to have something so that too much lag time didn't go by. And then it just went viral. So it's just on everybody's For You page. When they click on TikTok, it just comes up. And so they see it. And so then they like it. And then I get all these likes.
Everyone loves you. Everyone loves you. I think you're a very inspirational figure in this online drum space, I think is what it really comes down to.
Well, that's what I feel like. I have inspired a lot of people that have always wanted to play drums. I get several messages every day. And then I've inspired some people who say they used to play drums, but then they haven't played in 20 years. They got married, had a family, were raising children. And just had that in the back of their mind. So I think I'm going to take this back up. And so I've gained a lot of students that way. They saw me and they, you know, asked me, sent me a message, do you give lessons? And so I've been doing virtual lessons for the last year and a half since COVID struck. And so, I'm having a ball. I wasn't bored during COVID for sure, because I've done several of these podcasts, Zoom meetings and all, and then all the virtual lessons. And then, I had to get all of those Drumeo lessons. I have to be ready on Tuesdays at noon. So I have to have that planned out, and I have to send them a PDF so that they can put it in that lesson. So when people go to that lesson, you just scroll down and there's the PDF. So I've been busy.
That's just wonderful. You're so wonderful. Let's talk about where you started. How did you start out playing drums? I have a bit of an idea because I read up on you as much as I could find, and your background is very similar to where I came from, and a lot of drummers. And it's a background that I think that every drummer who wants to be a serious musician should start at. Where did you start playing drums?
Yeah. If you're implying starting out with rudiments in a marching,
Yes,
I was
yes,
in the
ma'am.
drum and bugle corps. Even some schools have really good marching bands, even if they don't go into a drum corps. But the really good marching bands that compete and win state champions, they always seem to have a drum and bugle corps drummer that works with them, or someone who has been in drum corps. And so they have that rudimental training, and then they pass it along to those students. And you could tell the difference if you get a band director who has no concept of the seriousness of rudiments and, the real strictness of it. You can tell a difference between that band and drum corps influenced high school and college band. So I'm from a very small town, like 6,800 people in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, right on the very top, right before you fall off the face of the earth, right on Lake Superior, way up at the very top. And for
They
some
call them
reason,
uppies. Is that what?
Youpers.
Youpers. That's it.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So I'm a Youper. But we had a drum and bugle corps because someone who lived there played snare drum in the, I'll say, Army. It was one branch of service, and it probably was the Army. And so, he lived there, and he started this drum and bugle corps. And we were state champs 5 out of the 6 years that I was in it. And then when I got married really young, 19. I still had 2 more years to march because you can age out at 21. But I got married at 19, and my sister was 6.5 years younger than me. So she was just getting to the age. When I left, she was 13. So she was just getting into drum corps. We were the first girls that were ever in that drum and bugle corps in the drum line. The reason that I started is because I loved music from when I was very small. Just like my grandson, you could see the music in him from the time he was 12 to 18 months old. He was playing rhythms with his hands. I think I was the same way. I started piano lessons when I was in 3rd grade. I took piano lessons for 6 years. And I played the saxophone in 6th grade because the band director, didn't let girls play the drums. But all the while, the drum corps was practicing on the field that was at the end of my block. I could look down over the hill and see the football field where the drum corps was. So you could hear them in the evenings as they were rehearsing. And I just could hear those drums, and I just wanted to play so badly. And so then 8th grade came, and you know how you you don't want to do anything really weird with your friends, thinking, oh, why is she doing that? And then get teased. But I couldn't take it any longer. I had wanted to play the drums for so many years. And I said, heck with it. I'm going. And so when school starts back after the summer, they start recruiting again. And so I went in probably the end of September, I guess. They were recruiting, but I walked in and said I want to join, in the drum line, and there wasn't any hesitation. Come on, So I signed up, and then we went 2 times a week, and we were on in the American Legion building, and there was a big, huge wooden ping pong table. So all the drummers would stand around the ping pong table. So there was little spots all the way around the ping pong table from the sticks, because we didn't have practice pads. This was a long time ago. This was back in 1963 or 64. So, there were no pads. So there was these little holes from all of us beating that table to death. And then the next summer, I played parades. I was in a feeder corps. And then as the upper corps, ages out, then you just kind of move on up. And so the first summer I marched, and
now,
we didn't do anything.
Was this like an early version of DCI?
Yeah. It wasn't called DCI then, but we marched we weren't, I think maybe like the cavies and the kilties and all, they were, I'll say the A class. We were underneath that, whatever it was, probably B class. I don't remember, but it wasn't DCI until I think they named it like 72 or something. Wow. 73. I'll have to look up the history. It wasn't named DCI then, but it was the same type thing. I mean, we went to competitions and we were competing in our smaller group while, we marched in the parades with the cavies and the kilties and
no, I know who you mean by the cavies, because I'm pretty well versed with DCI from marching band. She's talking about the Cavaliers.
The Cavaliers.
And then who are the kilties?
I think they were from Wisconsin, if I'm not mistaken. But and the troopers from Casper, Wyoming, they were there for the competitions that we were in. What's the good corps? That's the blue
devils, blue coats.
Blue devils.
Okay,
and the California. Blue coats. I mean, those corps were there, but it just wasn't called DCI back then.
Wow, you're like a pioneer of that scene.
I know.
I've been to so many DCI shows, and you just don't really realize how long that's been around. Before we do that, because I know that my channel is mostly a drum set channel, although I do as much marching band stuff as I can get into it. Let's first describe to people who wouldn't know what DCI is, and the best way that I can describe it is it's like professional marching band without getting paid.
Right. No, the corps gets paid in a lump sum of how much if you take first place or second place or third place or whatever, but the kids don't see it. It just goes towards equipment and bus fuel to get from place to place. And
so even back then, did you have to pay to be in the corps?
Being that little corps, no.
Oh, really?
No, we didn't have the big sum of money. We that guy that I was speaking of that was over the drum corps, his name was Joe. He would tell us how many days we're going to be gone that week if we left on Thursday, and he would say, okay, we provide this meal and this meal on Friday and then Saturday. So all you need to do is bring enough and he would let us know. And I think that's all we paid for, is just certain amount of food. And then we always took either first place or second place. So we got enough money for the next week's competition. And so, it's totally different now. Now you have to have the big bucks. Yes, because one of my former students, he made corps. He made Carolina Crown. And then when he found out how much it was going to cost, he couldn't do it. He
Same
couldn't
thing
do
with
it.
me. I went to a few camps to the Glassman when I was in
Oh yeah.
college and was offered a bass drum. And man, I was a broke college student. And like, I was like,
Uh-huh.
I can't go ask Big Steve, like go to my dad and be like, hey, can you give me X amount, which was, this have been like 95, 96, to go play marching band. And see, my uncle is in the music business. He's a guitar player.
Uh-huh.
And he understood being in the music business and, you know, getting paid for your gig. And Big Steve was just like, wait, you paid them to play a gig? Like, I can't
Yeah.
do
Because
that.
playing one season of drum corps, if you're in a top corps, say the top, not even the top 10, just say the top 15 or 20, you finish that one season and you have learned more and you can play better than 4 years of college.
Yes, ma'am. I've talked about it a lot. I have where I live in a state that has a very strong marching band competition culture. And and I know a lot of people who've actually marched. And I have a friend who's a policeman now who marched for the Bluecoats. He was actually center snare at the Bluecoats.
Oh
And
gosh.
he's not an active drummer anymore. He's a policeman with a family, and he can still pick up drumsticks many
Oh yeah.
years after playing and still has some of the best chops of anyone that I know that's an active player right now.
Yes, because what was the reason? How many other people practice 8 to 12 hours a day?
Not many. And you're made
Dr-
to, too. You know, you have no choice but to do that.
we practiced in the morning. If we were doing a big show that weekend, we'd get together, just the drummers, from 10 until 12. We'd go home for lunch. We'd go back from 2 to 4. Or sometimes I would go over 4 and practice with the horns, with the music, whatever. And then go and eat dinner and then go back in the evening. And Upper Michigan doesn't get dark until like 10:30 at night. There's just a lot of daylight in the summer. And so we would practice from say 7 until 9:30, 10 o'clock, depending on how long or how important that show was that weekend. And you did that every day. And then when we left on the buses, we were running through parts. You know, drummers have a drum language, and we're like, okay, we're going through parts in the bus. That's all you do and think. You don't have time for anything else. You are there for that summer, and it's the best time of your life. I did it for 6 summers, and I cried when I decided I had to either get married or play the drums. Well, my husband is from here in Myrtle Beach. He was stationed in Upper Michigan. He got orders to Klamath Falls, Oregon. So think of the logistics on the map. I would have never seen him again. So I'm like, well, I guess we'll get married.
So when you were also in the Corps, were you in your high school marching band as well?
No, never played in band.
What?
Nope.
There was a band director that was like, here's this specialized drum corps lady, and she's not in my marching band.
Really, none of us, I don't think hardly any of us did, because
Really?
what we were doing was so far above what the band was doing.
Okay.
Those drummers were playing like a typical band, like, you know, we're playing all kinds of intricate stuff, So no, we didn't play in band.
Yeah, the differences between what you end up doing in DCI or whatever it was called when you were in it to high school. It's literally the difference between playing in a high school football team and a professional football team.
Professional, yes. Yes. The difference is drastic.
I've had a few students over the years that's done it. I've had a student who ended up being a center snare at the Cavaliers, and man, I know how much he paid to do the Cavalier, or not the Cavaliers, sorry, the Cadets.
Cadets.
And,
see, that's another corps that was there.
The Cadets of they were called the Cadets of Bergen County at the time, right?
Yeah, I think that's what. Yeah, they had a little bit different twist on their name, and they were amazing too.
And they still are, which is wonderful. I think it's this weird subculture that even musicians who are plugged in don't know about. Like so many big like drummers, like, oh wow, you're this great drummer. Like, who's your favorite corps? Have you ever seen Phantom Regiment? And they just have no idea that this thing exists.
Yeah, they don't know what they're missing. The intricacies of playing in a line when you have 8, 9 snares, and they're playing exactly like each other so that it sounds like one drummer takes some skill, and they have no idea.
It's the most powerful thing because I taught drumline for 13 years after I graduated college, and I think that you probably did too, and I want to get into it. When you stand in front of a well-rehearsed drum line, it's as powerful as hearing Led Zeppelin live. It's the most I'm getting goosebumps thinking about it. I had to retire from it just because the band I was in was touring so much. I didn't really have time to give it the amount of time that it deserves. And it happens to me every year, right around when my private students start bringing in their exercises or their audition pieces. And I start thinking like, man, it's real fun to be out there about 9 o'clock on a Thursday when, band camp, and that Thursday when things start clicking and like, I could do this again. It's something I miss every year when the season comes around. And then I actually did for a while, judging, like, being the drumline judge. And that's fun. It's fun to get paid to have people be made to listen to you bitching into a camcorder, into a recorder. But man, there's nothing like it to be in front of a drum line that's just well rehearsed and marching in step, and every move is synchronized. It's rock guys and rock women who don't know that, they don't get it. They don't understand.
No, we were called the Blue Notes, and we had red, white, and blue. So we had the blue pants with the red stripe, the white satin with the line going across here with blue and red, and your hat and your red plume and stuff. And back then we had to start on the starting line, everybody straight, and we did the inspections. They would come and inspect your shoes to see if they were polished, and everything had to be perfect. And then we stepped off that line all together with stars and stripes, and the horns would hold their horns up, da, 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 and the crowd would go absolutely bananas. And our line was straight for the most part. And then we get back into where the solo part was amazing with those trumpets, and the Blue Notes were just the thing back then because this was a small hometown, and they still have a alumni corps. Some of the originals, those people are in their 70s and late 70s, are still marching with them.
That's great. That's so great. So
they do the festivals and parades and stuff.
So did that corps become like another, like, did it turn into like another, like, DCI type thing?
No, they, for some reason, because I moved away. My sister was marching. I was so far away. We lived in Klamath Falls, Oregon for that first year. And then we moved here to Myrtle Beach. And then I started having children, and, I was just so far away. And back then you couldn't just jump in your car. It's 1,500 miles from here to Upper Michigan. And so I kind of lost track of exactly how many years my sister even marched. And then they disbanded for some reason. But then the people that were kind of over the business end of it or whatever still had all the horns and the uniforms, and they said, let's start an alumni corps. And so the alumni corps has been going, for years and years.
Do you go to DCI shows now? Because I'm pretty sure they have to have a competition that comes through South Carolina.
Well, there was one that happened in Columbia, but I'm not even sure if it's still. And then there was one in Atlanta. And when I was working with one of the high schools here, he took the band. Oh, I think there was one in Charlotte, North Carolina also.
It had to be.
And so we would go to one or two of them, but I haven't been in years.
DCI would die to work with you, ma'am. If you talk to them, they would bring you around for sure.
I'm too old now.
No, you're not. No, they would love to have you. I'm certain of it.
But it was just the best time of my life, really.
All of my kids that have ever done it, I think I've had probably over the years, maybe 10 or 12 that went on to do corps. Even as adults, when they have, kids and bills and stuff, they still talk about it like you do. Yeah. Every one of you all talk about it like that. No one ever does it for an amount of time and is like, I regret doing that. I really wish I would have done something else that summer.
Oh, no, I can't imagine. Because, the guys that were, especially by the time you're 20 and 21, you're into college, you're almost through with college, and you should be working in the summer, but you don't have time to work if you're in corps. But they didn't care. Now, there were a few that might have worked a few hours a week on the days that we were at home, because when I was in it, we would go home. We would travel, say, get ready to leave early Friday morning, and we would be gone Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and come back in the middle of the night, Monday morning, and then practice again, and then take off again. Sometimes we would leave on a Thursday, depending on where we would travel. We traveled into Wisconsin, over into Minnesota. We'd go down as far as Chicago, all through lower Michigan, and then even over into Sarnia, Canada, that goes right off of Detroit somewhere. And so depending on how far away we were. But I mean, we were home to wash the uniform. And then, like I say, some of the guys might have worked somewhere. But back then, I don't think people worked, especially up in Upper Michigan. I don't think the young people worked who weren't, just out of high school and they weren't in a drum and bugle corps. And then they were just starting their life. Of course, they worked. But, people that went to college and all, I don't think there was enough places for everyone to work even. It's so small.
Full-time drummer when you're doing that DCI stuff, man.
Oh, you don't have time. Yeah.
So you touched briefly on, you were talking about, you were teaching a drum line, and this is something I did for 13 years. And I just talked about how much I miss it. Tell us about you going in, and now you've aged out and you have this wealth of information. If you march in a drum corps for 6 years, you are a fountain of information of rudimental and marching band techniques. Tell us about some of your drum lines, and did you go to music school afterwards?
No, I didn't. No, when I was the summer after I graduated high school, I started teaching the feeder corps that I mentioned that I was in, because they didn't have a drum instructor. So that's as early as I started. I was only 17. And so that was my first drumline experience. And we had a pretty darn good, and these kids were only like in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade and all. And we had a pretty good drumline back then. And then when I got married and then we moved here, I was just playing in bands, and I played 5 nights a week, but I didn't have to get there until like 9 o'clock. We played 9 to 1. And so my husband would be here at the house taking care of the kids. the babies or whatever. And I think I didn't start, had a few private students, but I didn't start drumline until my son, who was playing saxophone, he got in the high school marching band. So that was 1986. So, he's in the marching band there. And so, of course, I would go there to pick him up or to watch or whatever. And the drummers were horrible. They were horrible. They played that typical, you know how the kids play on the rim? I'll show you. They're marching down the street and the bass drums are just playing like 4 on the floor and they're just doing. And the bass drum be going boom, ba-doom, ba-doom, boom, 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 digga, digga, doom, ba-doom, ba-doom. And the drummers were just going. And they didn't know rudiments. They didn't know any rudiments. And I couldn't believe it. So I went to the band director and I said, I'm a drummer and I know rudiments and I would love to come and help the kids. And so he said, sure. And so I started and I built that drum line, and it brought the band scores up because the drum line would take like first place. Their scores would be the highest. And so it helped the whole band be up into the upper numbers. So I worked at that school like every day. I was there after school with the drummers, and then I would go when they had their competitions and stuff. So I did that for 10 years. My son graduated and I just kept on and on. And then ever since then, I go back and I'll work like for one season and then I'll take a season off or whatever. And then I'll go through during the year. The band director will have me come in and do like some workshops and even help the jazz drummers on the kit and tune the drums for them and things like that. So also in the last probably 28 years, the past 28 years, I've been working at the middle school every year. And I helped the 6th grade. That's their first year of taking up drums. I kind of weed out the ones that have no rhythm because you don't need to be playing drums if you don't have any rhythm. And so then I start working with 6th grade, and then I come back and do the 7th grade and 8th grade and get them prepared so that when they get to high school, it's not like culture shock. Oh my gosh, you have rudiments, in high school, because I have passed on those rudiments to the high school. And then some of my former students have been drum instructors there at that high school. So it's just we've been just weaving in and out of, helping both schools, the middle school and the high school. So the band director, she retired yesterday. I saw it on Facebook. She said she's retired. So now we have to see who comes in and, what kind of help they need. And
I think they're going to inherit you.
Hopefully they carry on, the tradition and let some of my former students do it or get me in there just to get them started. We'll see what happens.
Let's now talk. I mean, I can really talk about marching band all day because again, like the longer I'm away from it, the more I miss it. Like, did you ever get into the writing for your drum lines? Did you do any of the writing?
Yeah, I did cadences.
Okay.
I didn't do so much. Well, we would get the music and then I would change it up a little bit, but I never wrote the whole score. But I would always write the cadences for them.
And do the punch it up, get that punch of those Melbay arrangements up, make them a little bit more difficult.
Yeah.
I know exactly what you're talking about. So you mentioned that you were in Myrtle Beach and you were playing 5 nights a week. I live in an area that Myrtle Beach is basically the summer home for where I'm from. Okay. I know Myrtle Beach quite well. So were you, and let's now move on to you going to drum set. Were you playing drum set while you were in the drum corps, or was that something that came later? And then I also want to talk about, and this is something I talk about in lessons for the last 26 years that I've taught, and I've talked about it on my channel till I'm blue in the face, how easy the transition is from drum corps to drum set, because you have those basics and fundamentals from rudimental playing, and your hands working really well. Now, of course, you got to start working on your feet and getting your feet together. Talk about, when did you start playing drum set, and how your marching band stuff made drum set playing a little bit easier than if you would have came in cold and had never played drum set.
Yeah. So like I knew that I was a musician, that I loved music, like I said, just from the time I was very small. So my dad worked late shifts in the mine, the iron ore mines. That's what everybody did up there. It's an iron ore place. And so he would either be coming home when Johnny Carson was on, or he would be leaving for the midnight shift. So my mom would wake me up. My mom or dad would wake me up and say, Buddy's on, Buddy Rich, talking about Buddy Rich, because he was just, jaw-dropping drummer, and he would be on Johnny Carson show all the time. And so I didn't have a drum set, but, I was playing drum corps, and they knew that I loved him. And so I would just watch and just drool and hope that one day I would get a drum set. Well, we really couldn't afford, drums. And I had that marching drum. I guess they figured that's all I needed. But in 11th grade, I came home from school one day. My dad had been grocery shopping, but walked by the music store, and there was a used set, a red sparkle set in the window. He went in and he bought it. And so it was in the living room when I got home. So that was 11th grade. And I put it together, set it up, what I thought it should be, and sat down and started playing rock beats and stuff. And I remember my mom and dad saying, how do you know how to do that? Well, I had been listening to Buddy. Not that I was playing like Buddy, but I had been listening to who all was back in this, like 66 and stuff. Was Zeppelin there yet?
Not yet. That would have been early Beatles.
Yeah. So Beatles,
early rock and roll, like whoever was playing with Elvis at the time.
Yeah. And then also, wasn't Motown? Motown?
Oh, yeah. Yes, ma'am.
So I listened to all that on the Ed Sullivan Show.
And you're in Michigan, which is Motown Central.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I had been listening to all those drummers and watching. So, I would watch what they did. And so I just sat down. Felt very natural. But like you did say, I did have to work on my feet a little bit to get the coordination between, get 2 and 4 on the hi-hats and stuff, because I had never done that before, but it didn't take very long. And I mean, the summer that I graduated from high school, I was still, playing corps, but these people in town knew about me. And so September came, we weren't playing anymore. Corps wasn't playing. So I got a job full time playing 5 nights a week. And we made $55 a night back in 1968.
That was a lot of money back then.
I thought I was really rich. That was a lot of money back then.
And what kind of music were you doing? Were you all doing like the covers of the day?
No, this was a dance band music for all the old people.
So you're swinging.
It was swing, but we did a lot of polka because there's a lot of Finlanders up there, Finnish people that came over to work in the mines. And so we did a lot of polkas and waltzes, and it didn't matter what day of the week. Those people were out till 1 o'clock in the morning dancing, and they had to go to work in the morning. But the band was really good, and we just played our butts off.
So you were saying that you were doing like 5 nights a week, like maybe like fast forward a little bit on that. Myrtle Beach. If you don't know Myrtle Beach is one of the East Coast's biggest uh, vacation destinations, and there is a really dense culture of bands playing every
Oh
night
gosh.
for
Oh
the
yeah.
tourists. So, what's your favorite song to play to shag to?
Oh my gosh. I love beach music.
No,
I haven't done that one in a while though, but that was like we did that every night and several times a night. And
so,
then Margaritaville too.
oh, do
I
they
don't know if
shag to Margaritaville too?
I don't know if they shagged to it, but we did tons of Margaritaville song.
Oh well, yeah.
Yeah.
If you're watching or listening on podcast or watching on YouTube, you may not know what we're talking about and may have thought that we were just getting risque there. But the shag
Oh, they
is
got to check it out.
the official dance of Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. Correct?
Yeah, and it is awesome. It's some intricate footwork. It's so fun to watch them. A good shagger, ooh. So they need to YouTube shag music, shaggers of North Myrtle Beach, because they still gather up there in North Myrtle Beach for contests and all.
So
So
were
yeah, I
you?
did play.
I was going to
I
say, so
did
you
play
were
some
doing
of
like
that.
5 nights a week for the tourists and stuff and such, right?
Yep, yep. But the first one I got in Myrtle Beach was country music. I had never even really heard country music before. Up there now they do, but back when I was growing up, I never heard country music.
And
So I
of
got a
course, Alabama, the big, this gigantic
oh
country band,
right,
Alabama started. What was the bar in Myrtle Beach that they started at?
the Bowery, it's
The
still there.
Bowery. The Bowery's still there. I've been there a few times actually. You can get Budweiser and Bud Light, and that's it.
Yeah,
That's it. There's nothing
you got to
else.
ring the bell.
Ring the
You got
bell.
to ring
Yeah.
the bell and get tips.
So Alabama was in Myrtle Beach and playing 2 nights a week for 365 days and become
Oh
one of the
god,
biggest country artists ever. So that's probably why Myrtle Beach, and of course Myrtle Beach is in the South, like that's probably why country music is such a big thing down there.
right, right.
And
It
so you were
is.
playing in country bands, and so you're playing a style of music that you grew up listening to Buddy Rich, and now you're playing, Buddy
Yeah.
Miller waltzes and such.
So
So
yeah, I had to learn all of that, but it was fun. And just like the same with the thing in Michigan, these people were out because we played Tuesday through Saturday. And on a Tuesday night, we played 9 to 1, and that place was packed. And it was in the winter. So it wasn't necessarily tourists. They just loved coming out and dancing, those people.
so are you still doing that gig now? No, I know probably the gigs. I don't know. Maybe the gigs are gone are back in South Carolina. But are
Oh,
you
they've
currently doing a
been.
band now? Doing that?
No, no, not in a band.
Do you miss
No,
it?
my last one was right when I went to Vancouver in November of 2019, when I went to Drumeo in Vancouver. Well, it's Abbotsford, but you have to fly into Vancouver. Uh, I had to get a sub for me because I was in a classic rock band. We were good, great guitar player. Oh my gosh, and really great bass player. So we were doing really well, and people loved us. And so I had to get a substitute. And when I got back, we had a gig that night, or the next night, I'll say. And I played that gig. And then the next week, I was wondering if we were going to rehearse. And then they said, "Oh, I didn't know you were able to play tonight." I'm like, "Why wouldn't I be? I'm back." And that was kind of how it ended. It was weird.
Ugh,
I'm like,
the music business.
I'm like, okay, because I've known those guys. I started that band up with them, and that's how I feel like, because people would come out because there was a lady drummer, and I kind of kept the band straight, as far as downbeats and stuff. But I had played with some of the members of the band before for several years, and so I've known those guys forever, and it was just like, what?
It might
And
be they just think that like
whatever.
you're just too famous for the band. You're one of the most famous band drummers on the internet, Dorothea. I don't think it. Does that register? Because like all I had to say to all of my friends and all my drummer friends, because I've been trying to get you on a while, and my friend Ben Helsinger, who works for Big Fat Snare Drum, who also wants you on his podcast. I'm supposed to send you to him.
Oh, okay.
And he said that he
Yeah,
had
I
sent you
have.
all stuff. He had sent you
I,
stuff, right?
he did. He did. I love it. I
Well, he
used I used the 13 on my floor tom, not this tom, but I did a gig last week for the high school. I played in the string orchestra, which was amazing. And we did Kashmir and with the violins, and it was amazing. But anyway, I had the 13 on the big fat snare. I had the 13 on my Questlove kit because the floor tom is a 13.
right.
And it worked perfect because I was on a stage with violins and I didn't want to be too loud.
Right. But I'm supposed to send you to him because he wants you as well. And
Okay.
his podcast is a little more structured than mine. He does a thing called the Top Five. I've been on it too, or Big Fat Five because the Big Fat Snare Drum. And
Yeah.
But anyway, everybody like I had the guy on from Evanescence. I had Will Hunt. Right. People are like, oh, that's cool. When I told people that
That's a
was
good
having
band.
you on it, dude, they're great and he's great. But when
Yeah.
I told everybody I was having the Godmother of Drumming, people freaked. I told my mom, and she was like, "Oh my god, this is like a big deal." I don't think do you get that? That like you can just say the Godmother of Drumming, and everyone knows who you're talking about.
I don't know that it's registered yet, but like I've gone to out of town. We were in North Carolina. I went to Guitar Center just to see what they had. Oh, this was when I was getting endorsed by Peisty, and I wanted to see what kind of cymbals I wanted. So I went there just to see what they had, and they all knew who I was when they walked in the door, and they wanted to take selfies with me. I'm like, really? You recognize me? I couldn't get over that. So it's been weird. But let me tell you, I'm this way it's kind of hard to believe because my brother-in-law and his wife and children live right next door. And then my husband has another brother and wife. And then we have neighbors, friends. They've never heard me play. They've never come up here to my wonderful drum room to look at my things, to question me about what I do. I'm just a person.
You're the secret superstar in their neighborhood.
So what I don't understand is if I knew one of them was doing this kind of stuff and was getting endorsed, even if it wasn't music, but it was something, I would go over there and say, tell me about it. No, they're not interested.
Well, I think that just
give a
goes.
rip.
Well, I think that just goes to you having, just a forward thinking idea about all of this. You know what I mean? Like you talked about, your grandson was like, "Hey, you should get on TikTok," and you hadn't even thought about doing that before.
No.
And I've got a few of my students have you on their TikTok, and they'll be like, "Oh, did you see?" They just call you Godmother of Drumming, and that's when I saw the one that you did where you're doing the classic accent, the second part of your double stroke to get both strokes even.
Yeah, because Dave Weckel did a clinic at the music store that I worked at, and he showed it, but I was already doing it. No one showed me. I just was doing it just to, stroke the doubles cleaner. And then Thomas Lang talks about it all the time. Mm-hmm. And it's the way, it's not a lazy, like blah, blah, blah. It's you're stroking because you're working your chops, and that improves your chops for getting around the kit in anything that you do. If you're lazy and have really loose grip, and everything's going to be dirty sounding.
It goes back to marching band is how to, the one thing about marching band that teaches you how to systematically break things down to its smallest pieces and practice that way. I think sometimes drum set players who are just like strictly drum set players. They sit down like, oh, here's all these drums. And they just think about trying to hit all of these drums. And they don't think about like getting away from all of these surfaces, getting on one surface and perfecting one thing. That's the kind
Right.
of, I think anyway, and I think you might agree, that's the kind of laser focus that the drumline rudimental world gives you.
Yeah.
And,
Oh,
and
you
you're,
did ask another question. You said something about drumline people who are strictly drumline playing drum set. Some can and some can't.
sometimes it's a little stiff.
It's
Sometimes
stiff.
I've seen some
and-
real badass drumline guys sit down and be stiff, real stiff.
Yeah. And really have no, it's not that they don't have rhythm, but they don't have groove or something.
Don't have no pocket.
Yeah. Yeah. So it doesn't always transfer over, but their chops would be there. But I think maybe they have to have some instruction on how to loosen up and how to play grooves.
I've talked about that a lot, and you almost have to have, like, at least I think, two minds about it, because marching band is so strict and regimental.
Yeah.
But when you go to marching band, you have to break that stiffness to get that good groove. So it does give you the tools, but there's that thing that you can't write down on a piece of paper, the groove, the pocket.
Yeah.
And there it can make you a little stiff, as I talked about my buddy, and I hope he doesn't watch this, who's a policeman who can still shred a drum, practice pad.
Yeah.
When he sits down on a drum set, it's tight and not.
It's not natural, and it's because they haven't played in a band. Also, I think if you got a gig with someone and then you were practicing first, hopefully before you got out in the crowd, you would have to learn, I've got to loosen up. I got to figure out what I'm going to play for that song. It's not rudiments and stuff,
So was your first drum set playing, was it because you said, and maybe we didn't talk about him enough, because I think I'm getting the idea of Buddy Rich as kind of one of your biggest influences and heroes. Did you start out playing that? Like when you sat down on the drum set, was your first thing going spang, spangalang, spangalang, or were you, playing rock beats?
No, because I liked the Motown. I liked that really like funky bluesy kind of thing. And then I liked what the rock bands were evolving into. And then I had Zeppelin albums, and then I bought like a little record player and cranked that thing up. And I was down in the basement trying to hear it. You played too loud and you couldn't hear the music, but I had a Cream. I loved Cream and Iron Butterfly and Zeppelin and
you're the coolest. You're the
Chicago.
You're the coolest mama of all time. And I say that because I know that you have your grandson.
Yeah. I never really played jazz until probably the last 15 years. There's a professor at our college here. He has a little jazz band. And
are you talking about Coastal?
Yeah. Okay. Coastal Carolina. Yeah. He's the saxophone horn instructor. And so he has a really good jazz band. He had a fantastic bass player, stand-up bass and all. And he'd get me to substitute. And I was like, I've never really played jazz before. But so, it was just swing. And so I really learned some technique for jazz just by having to go to those gigs and fill in for the drummer who had previous engagement or whatever.
Have you ever done any musicals as well?
Oh gosh. Yeah, I did a lot of musicals here in Myrtle Beach. Yeah, there was a group that did. And then there was one in Conway, which is like 15 miles from here. And then there was one in Georgetown. I don't know if you've heard of that. Mm-hmm. They had a theater group and I did some theater with them. Yeah. So I did that probably off and on for 10 years. So I did a lot of musicals.
And see, that goes back, and I'm so glad that we have been able to put marching band and that scene and that art form over, because here's another thing where, if you're going to be a marching band, you have to be a fantastic reader, and if you're going to do musicals, you have to be even better reader than that. So there's another
Oh, yeah.
way that marching band influenced what you did later on.
Yeah. I'm not a great or fantastic reader. So just seeing all those, because in the theater, you're not just playing drums. You have, a little quick timpani part and a little tambourine, and you're constantly moving around triangle, the bar chimes. So you're having to read all of this stuff. So it's kind of scary.
It is.
And I also played in the symphony orchestra here for 10 years.
Wow.
And had never done that. And so that was really scary, because symphonic music, the people who write these pieces are not percussionists, you can tell, because there'll be like 89 bars of nothing, and then they'll write one ting for a triangle. It's like, why did you even put that there?
Just to make you count the 89 measures that goes up to it.
I know. So I had a crash, and we had a kind of a crabby orchestra conductor. And he was kind of new, and he was kind of crabby. And so we had this piece, I don't even know what it was, but it was just hundreds of nothing bars. And with, there'd be 4/4, 3/8, then there'd be a 2/4 and a 3/8 again. And it was like, and I knew this crash was coming up, and I wasn't sure where I was. I wasn't sure. I didn't play it. And he looks over. I'm like, oh, that's where it was. I just put the cymbals back down. Oh.
You have been able to just about do everything, Mrs. Taylor. You started in drum corps, and then you started playing in rock bands, and then you went to Myrtle Beach and was playing every night. You've done musicals. You've done, like what you just said, was you played in the symphony, which is a whole other different perfection than even drum corps.
Oh,
like maybe the chops aren't the same, but the perfection of it is different. Those classical cats are wired completely different than the rest of us are.
Yes.
And all of that is from you being in this corps when you were 16 years old. All of that came from there.
If I didn't do that, my life would have been much different. I don't know what would have happened.
So now I want to talk about, and then I'll, we'll wrap it up here. How did you get matched up with Drumeo? Did you do a video that kind of just went viral, and then the Drumeo cats came calling?
They did come calling, but I don't know the specific video that they might have seen. I just think that they found me through several of the videos that I had. And I get a message. I think it was a message. And he said that he was from Drumeo and he wanted to call me on the phone. But, by then I was already getting kind of like spam messages and stuff.
Yeah.
So I was like, should I? So I gave the telephone number, and then maybe like the next day my phone rang and I saw Abbotsford, Canada. And I was like, oh my gosh. And so I said hello, and he said, Dorothea. And I said, hey, Dave. I knew it was Dave. I just recognized his voice from Drumeo. And he said, we want to invite you out. And here I am watching Drumeo with all these amazing, famous drummers. And I said, are you sure that you want me? And he said, oh, yes. He said, we've been talking about you. We have some things planned. He didn't tell me that I was going to be doing acting when I got there. And he didn't tell me I was going to be driving his car in a strange city, which I had no idea where I was even going. He's like, just tap on the steering wheel and we'll play the music and the radio and we'll tell you where to go. I'm like, oh my gosh.
Am I even licensed to drive in Canada?
I know. It was so fun, so crazy. And then we did that egg video. So I had to do a little acting in that. I'm like, I'm not an actor.
Is that where the Cajon video was done?
No.
Okay.
I don't. No, I didn't do a Cajon video there. No.
Okay. So thank you so much for coming on here. I think that just from just my little circle of friends, people have wanted to know more about you. And one really quick story. And I really wanted to go through this whole interview without making a big deal about you being a woman, because I don't think that a woman or a man is any difference when it comes to playing drums. But I wanted to tell you about a story of one of my students who I turned you on to. And it's weird because I know the time frame that these are, and you were more accepted before she was. She came to me as an older woman, and she was a cancer survivor, so she was doing her bucket list, and she grew up about the same area, but about the same time frame as you.
Mm-hmm.
And she was I think she was from Pittsburgh, and she was the top drummer in her high school. And when she went to the university, like a major big university in like the late 60s, early 70s, she wasn't allowed to be on the drum line. They didn't allow her on the drum line. And it seems like you, again, I didn't want to make this a gender thing, but it seems like you never really had to deal with any of that. People just like, oh, there's Dorothea and she's a badass and we're gonna have her in the band.
No, I didn't. The only thing that I can say, there are tons of bands here in Myrtle Beach because, every poolside and all these restaurants, everybody has a band. And I think the only thing that I can say about that is they know that the people around here know that I play drums. And I think they just hire the guys instead. It's not like that, I've played in tons and tons of bands. So I feel like that could be a lot of what it is, gender, and they just, that way they can talk dirty and, be nasty with each other, and it's all guys.
Right.
I feel like that could be the reason. I don't know, but I feel like that because I would tune. These guys would come in, didn't even know how to pick out a pair of sticks if they matched. One could be hollow and break with one rim shot, and I would test all their sticks for them, and I set them straight on what cymbals they need, tune their drums. One guy was an amazing drummer, couldn't even change the snares on his snare drum. And I would do all that for him. And, the guys would get the jobs and nobody ever asked me to play.
Man, I think it's changing a lot now. I think you are kind of at the vanguard of it. I want to tell you this story because I think that you would appreciate it. I had one of the last drum lines that I had ended up being, except for the pit, because we did have more dudes in the pit. Because I taught both. I taught the battery and the pit when I was when I was back in the day. But it just worked out that we had all women and Trevor, and they ended up making T-shirts that said that they called it Stevie's Angels, right? So I had this mostly female drum line, and there's nothing dumber than a teenage boy, right? So we're going to our first competitions, and people are like, "Here comes all these girls." And by the end of the season, this is probably one of my favorite drum lines. Actually, I only have very few pictures of drum lines that I've had over the years, and this is one of the pictures that I have. I just moved. I'm not sure where it's at, but I'd show it to you. And by the end of the season, people were like, "Oh no, here comes this all female," and we were kicking everybody's behinds that year. And it's one of the most proudest drum lines that I ever had. And they were tough. Those girls were so tough. I had one. I got to tell you the story. This is like you've taught in high school. You know how this is. I had a girl go on, and this was the champion, like state championship of the year. And she, on her way to the competition field, she she fell with a bass drum on and had a hairline fracture in her ankle.
Oh,
She finished the show. I told her, I was like, look, just, we'll set you up on the sideline. It's not ideal, but it'll get you at least playing. It's the final show of the year. And like through tears, this girl was like, she's 15, 16. She's like, I'm finishing this. And goes
oh.
on the show and plays the show. And then I had to ride in the ambulance with her to the hospital. And then we find out the doctor's just like, you're not supposed to be walking because you have a fractured ankle. I was like, she just did a 13-minute show with like choreographed, marching. And it was just,
That's amazing.
I love this. I love that stuff. Dorothea.
The drum corps probably, kids out there in the big competitions, DCI sick or, with a broken ankle or a broken finger or whatever, and they just do the competition and get through it.
Because that's a lot of, it's a lot of work that you've worked to get to that one moment right there.
Yeah, you're not going to not do it.
You're going to make me want to go get a drumline job again. Oh man, it's
It
so
is
hot
fun.
these days. That's the one thing when I talk about like, I start feeling it like, man, it's about time to start writing cadences and start writing exercises. And then I go outside and it's 98 degrees. And I'm like, maybe
that's what's preventing me from continuing, because I mean, by 8:00 in the morning here in the summer,
man, South Carolina's so hot. Oh my God.
It's because of the humidity. Yep. Yeah. So yeah, I can't do it anymore. I'm too old. I don't want to sweat to death.
That's about how I'm at. I'm with it too. So Mrs. Taylor, before we go, please put in all your plugs and where everyone can find you.
Okay. Well, on Instagram and TikTok, both, it's the same. Lowercase, just Taylor, Taylor Dorothea, Dorothea. Instagram and TikTok, it's both the same. Then Facebook, I have it under my maiden name too. So it's Dorothea Jose, Jose. It looks like Jose, but it's not. It's Jose Taylor, Dorothea Jose Taylor.
Is that a Finnish name?
It's English.
Okay.
Because both my grandparents came over to work in the mines, and they were from England. Then we had a part of the city with all the Finns hung out right here and had their houses. All the Italians were right here by the Catholic Church. And then English were just a little bit kind of spread. And that's the history of my little town. It's funny. But and then you can find me at Dorothea Taylor on YouTube. I don't put a whole lot. I need to start. There's a few newer things, but there's all my older things. I did paradiddles at 230 beats per minute, which Jesus. I can't get them up that fast now. But it's on there from like 12 years ago on YouTube.
Yeah, you need to put all your stuff on YouTube and monetize all that stuff. I've got a student who does drum videos on TikTok. She has like 40,000 subs. We actually have this friendly rivalry of our sub count, and right now Leighton is beating me. But you can monetize all that stuff on YouTube, Mrs. Taylor. I mean,
I don't even know how. I haven't even.
If you need help, I will help you with any of that. I am here to serve you, ma'am. I can help you with all of that.
Okay, cool.
So Dorothea Taylor, the godmother of drumming, thank you so much on coming on Know Your Role. I think that, again, I want to reiterate that you are a inspiration, and I'm just a huge fan. And please keep doing what you're doing, because I want to always be going on your Instagram and seeing new stuff.
I hope that I'm able to, and just keep my fingers crossed.
Well, thank you so much for being here, ma'am. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.